as we take you now to the political editor, Mzwandile Mbeje, to get his take on the outcome. Mzwandile, let's talk a little bit. A very good evening to you. Some highs and, of course, some expectations, as well as some surprises that came with this announcement. What is your take on the new cabinet that we had to wait so long to hear about?
Oh, well, a very good evening to you. And I wouldn't say surprises, because we expected this to be a government of national unity, or an executive that will really include a number of political parties. Obviously, ours was really to check who is placed where, particularly from the parties that are part of this GNU. It was interesting to see the leader of the Democratic Alliance, John Steenhuisen, as the Minister of Agriculture. I thought that was quite interesting after a lot that had been said about what the DA was wanting to get from this. And then, of course, the leader of the IFP is the Minister of COGTA, also a very important portfolio, that one. So there's a lot that they'll have to do there. But also, for me, was the splitting of agriculture and land affairs and rural development, and land affairs and rural development going to Mzwandile Nyonzo. And that is very interesting, given the history of the PAC. They've always been about land. And here is an opportunity as a government minister. Now you are driving that issue of land. So it will be very, very interesting to see what sort of changes, or rather, what sort of agenda he will be able to push now that he's got this kind of a portfolio. And also another party which was also interesting. You'd recall that after the elections they had been very public about wanting the Department of Home Affairs, and then they basically got the Department of Arts and Culture and the Sport, that is Gayton McKenzie there. I also found that quite interesting. But also the other portfolio that we were looking out for, because we knew that the former minister Dr. Naledi Pandor had not made it into Parliament, but given that the President could still have the possibility of appointing someone from outside, because the law does allow him to do that. So we thought perhaps for the sake of continuity, given the challenges and what South Africa is going through, he is probably going to perhaps look that way. But interestingly, Ronald Lamola got that post. He is now the Minister of International Relations. Quite a crucial post, given what South Africa is currently doing, particularly around the issues at The Hague and the international role that this country has been playing. So there's been quite a lot, and you saw some of the ministers really becoming deputy ministers, because there has to be a lot of give and take in this. I recall of the Public Works and Infrastructure Minister, Sihle Zikalala, the former minister, is now the deputy. It's the same thing with other ministers as well. So there are those that were given lesser roles after being full ministers. So there was really, really interesting to see what the president did in terms of navigating all the interest of the different parties that really have made it into this government of national unity.
Yeah, as we speak about this composition, Mzwandile, we know that another move is, of course, the Basic Education Department, where Siviwe Rwagube takes over the portfolio, and now moving Angie Motshekga to the Ministry of Defence and Military. And of course, we know the budgetary constraints and all the challenges that come with that portfolio as you and I speak.
Oh, yes, and that was very interesting. In fact, when you look at Minister Angie Motshekga going to defense, and you look at someone who's deputizing her, one of the deputies there, General Bandi Holomesa, someone who is a general, someone who understands defense quite, quite massively. I mean, he has been in this area. This is how he grew up. He's a trained general. He's a soldier. So it will be very interesting to see how that shapes up. It was one of the areas really that many people were looking at. And then, of course, you've spoken about basic education. We see that Siviwe Gwagube from the DA is the one who is there now. It will also be interesting to see what sort of oomph and zeal she will inject. She's generally a very energetic person. So will she be able to bring that energy in terms of dealing with issues around basic education? But of course, it's a huge portfolio, and every year that portfolio, everyone's looking out for it, because you have to do the exams, the exam results, the matrics, and the young ones going to school. So there's a lot more that will be happening. So I know it's still early days. We're still going to unpack it quite thoroughly as matters go on, but at the side of it, you can see that the president was trying to really balance the fact that he has formed a government of national unity comprising of these parties. And then we saw the expression of those parties by being represented in the national executive. Of course, there were one or two who are part of this who may not necessarily have made it into the national executive. Remember, the legislatures, they also are part of the government of national unity in terms of this arrangement. So we hope to see some of the parties being represented there as well.
And also perhaps very lastly, Mzwandile, before we let you go, the Ministry of Police also now headed by Senzo Mchunu. Of course, we know the many, calls for Bheki have been building up over the past few years, and now Senzo Mchunu taking over this portfolio, and also perhaps talking a little bit about what the next steps are now. We know that a dialogue is set to take place. We heard the president asking for South Africans to add their voice and weight to it as we go on this path with the government of national unity.
Oh yes, they will have to hit the ground running. It's been some time, so the president has been the only one with executive authority. He has now appointed his ministers and deputy ministers, and then they will have to start work. We understand that on Tuesday they will be sworn in, and then from there it's work. And then of course they will be preparing for the opening of parliament, which will happen on the 18th of July. That is Mandela's birthday. So I guess they carefully chose that day to really remind South Africans where we come from, what is it that they want to achieve, particularly in 2024, when we somehow repeat that which was done in 1994 through the government of national unity. So that is what we expect now, and then the ministers will have to be seen, not only be seen, will have to really get going in terms of solving the many challenges that are facing us. You've just spoken about the issue of police. Crime levels are very, very high, and then South Africans will want to see a difference in that regard. I mean, if people perhaps were saying Minister Cele should go, it means they were frustrated about some of the crimes they felt were not being solved. So that is the kind of pressure Minister Mchunu will face, and he will have to really come up with strategies assisted by his deputies in terms of tackling the issue of crime in South Africa, which is at the moment unacceptably high.
Very well. Mzwandile Mbeje there, who's the politics editor here at the SABC, giving his take